Hi, and welcome to the Grieving with God podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Byington. This week is another mini episode where I share with you the daily walk and struggle we had while we were pregnant with my son, Ezekiel, who was diagnosed with trisomy 18. I wanted to discuss with you what it was like being pregnant while carrying a child I knew was going to pass. This week, I don't have any notes. Last week, you might have seen me looking down at my notes, but this week, I don't have anything. So we're going to kind of wing it and see how it goes. So I was 13 weeks pregnant when I found out my baby, Ezekiel, was going to pass. They told us he would pass within a few weeks. So we had no idea. But we kept praying that we would carry him full term. As we did more research about trisomy 18, we realized that the longer he stayed in utero, the more chance he had of being born alive. And we had wanted to have just a few moments of him alive so we could see his soul and his spirit and get to know him. So that meant that as I prayed for that to happen, that I would have to carry a baby who was going to die. There literally were days where I felt like my womb was a tomb, that I was carrying death. And I felt fake and I felt false and I felt like a fraud. And it was a weird feeling to be walking down the streets pregnant and being embarrassed that I was pregnant because I felt like this isn't real because he's going to die. This isn't going to be my baby that I get to raise. And so it just felt so weird and awkward to be pregnant and putting on maternity clothes and watching my body shift and shape and grow and people recognizing that I was pregnant. And I think that was the hardest part, was that I would go into church and there were some people who didn't know what we were struggling with and would be excited. Oh, I'm so, you're pregnant. What do you do? And how's it going? And sometimes I would answer and just say, oh, I'm fine. I'm however many weeks pregnant. And I wouldn't say anything more. Because to admit that my baby was going to die would bring up a whole can of worms that I was not ready to get into before service or after service on my way home. So it became where I would come to church late and I would leave early because I didn't want to deal with talking to people who I really didn't want to go into the details. But there were a significant number of people in our church who did know what was going on. And they really did try to protect me. So sometimes if they saw me coming and they saw someone who may not know what was going on, I could see them whispering to them and just kind of prepping them. Just don't ask. Just don't ask how I'm doing with my pregnancy. Let them take the lead. Let them ask the questions. So that was a really strange feeling, carrying a child and every day not having any idea if he was even alive. When he began to move around 14 to 16 weeks, it was such a relief. We were actually told we would never feel him move because he would be so small and he would grow very slowly and he wouldn't be very strong because of his disorder or the trisomy 18. So when I did start to feel him move, I began to jump for joy because to me, that was a way for me to measure that he was still here with us, he was still alive, and he was still good. But every single time I came to that doctor's office, I would hold my breath because I just knew one of these days they won't find a heartbeat. I didn't want to think about that. I kept praying every day, every week, every month, every doctor's visit that today wouldn't be the day. So life went on and we carried him for 20 weeks. And that in itself was a miracle, considering all that was wrong with him. I do go into some detail as to what those doctor's appointments were like and what exactly was wrong with him and what we were dealing with and struggling with and praying for and what my health was like. But we did have a beautiful group of people who surrounded us, loved us, prayed for us, protected us, provided for us. And I really do encourage you that if you are suffering something similar, whether you are carrying a baby you know is going to die, or you're suffering a miscarriage right now, or you're having any kind of suffering or pain, or maybe you're caring for someone who is in hospice and you know that their time is drawing to an end, find those people in your life who you trust, who you know will bring you before the throne of God and pray for you. For those people who will come and drop off a meal and never even ask you if they can. They will just drop it off, knowing you put it in the fridge or freezer and it'll be fine. Have those people around you, because it is such a relief to not have to think about some of the day-to-day things. And so don't feel guilty or upset or frustrated if someone signs you up for a meal train. Take the meal train. And if you don't want to eat the food, gift it to someone else or put it in your freezer for another day. But it is really a gift to not have to think about, what am I going to eat? How am I going to go grocery shopping when I don't even feel like getting out of bed? And sometimes some of these people can do other things for you, like come over and do your laundry, take your other children out to the park, give you some time to sleep and rest. Um, don't neglect those gifts that God places in your life. There's a quote from, um, I cannot remember his name, but he is an old monk. And I really love him. And I will find his name later and maybe put it in the show notes. But he said something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, to not neglect the people that cross your path because they have been placed there by divine, what was it? By divine, not invitation, but appointment. So these people that come across our path sometimes, or sometimes just pop up randomly, are there by a divine appointment. So don't neglect that. Take it. I think back to an episode that I had where a friend shared that the day she miscarried her baby, she hadn't known yet that she was miscarrying. It was early morning. She'd gone to a coffee shop with some friends, and she saw a friend of hers, a mutual friend of ours, who had miscarried. And she gave her friend a hug, and they talked briefly about her past miscarriage. And then she said, then that afternoon, she started miscarrying. And when she thought back, she felt like that was definitely a divine appointment of God saying, hey, you are surrounded by people who have done this before. You have resources around you. You can go to this person and ask for help, ask for comfort, ask for guidance, for prayer. And I just want to encourage you to think back about all those people who God puts across your path. They are there for a reason. And so I hope you join me next time on the Grieving with God podcast.